Greetings, fellow cultivators. Welcome to Autonova. Remember to like and subscribe to support the journey. Now, let's dive into the next chapter of A Will Eternal. He didn't stay very long in the Shuehui clan. As evening fell, the cautious and respectful clan members threw a big ceremony. Later, Bai Xiaochun strutted out of the clan, then flew up into the air. A few hours later, he was getting close to the Luokan Mountains. By now, the idea of finally going home surged strong in his heart. Taking a deep breath, he sped toward the mountains, carefully sending divine sense ahead of him to scan the path. Soon, he realized that there was something different about the mountains. There was a strange aura lurking within them, something that caused Bai Xiaochun's heart to jitter fearfully. What's going on? He thought. More cautious than ever, he proceeded along until it was late in the night. At that point, he was nearing a ravine that led into the mountain range, and that was when he saw something completely shocking. A faintly glowing screen of light was visible, stretching high up into the heavens, almost like a gigantic wall. That wall of light rose up from the mountains, climbing as far as the eye could see, completely separating the territory of the Spirit Stream sect and the Bloodstream sect. There was no need for Bai Xiaochun to perform any tests to determine how powerful that wall was. He was sure that if he tried to force his way through it, he would instantly be destroyed in body and soul. Face flickering, he confirmed that the shield wall contained the fluctuations of Spirit Stream sect magic. The Luokan Mountains are the Spirit Stream sect's strongest defense against the Bloodstream sect. Heart trembling, he thought back to some of the rumors he'd heard about the Luokan Mountains when he was in the Spirit Stream sect. Supposedly, the mountains formed the main line of defense that had been erected by the Spirit Stream sect 10,000 years ago. Back in the Bloodstream sect, I didn't get the sense that much was happening in the outside world. But the truth is that the war has reached the point that this shocking shield has already been put up. That's very telling. After a moment of thought, Bai Xiaochun approached the ravine, then turned back and looked in the direction of the Bloodstream sect. A long moment passed. Finally, he checked the area to make sure he was alone, then took a deep breath and slowly reached up and put his hand on his face. After a pause, he removed the mask, revealing his true facial features. He put the mask away and waved his sleeve to dispel the bloody aura of the Bloodstream sect. Then he pulled in all the fluctuations of his undying live forever technique. A moment later, the aura of the Violet Chi Heavenspan incantation erupted from his spiritual seas, and he began to walk toward the light shield. When he made contact with the shield, a shocking presence gripped him, something that left him feeling icy and numb. From the feeling he got, he could be wiped out at any moment. He immediately stopped in place, unmoving, his anxiety mounting. After a few breaths worth of time passed, the icy presence slowly faded away, and he could move again. Taking a step forward, he passed through the shield. I doubt that was the divine sense of one of the patriarchs, he thought. It was probably the formation automaton of this spell formation. Fear lingered in his heart as he looked back at the shield. Taking a deep breath, he looked around at vegetation that was no longer crimson, but rather, lush and emerald green. The feeling he got was completely different than the Bloodstream sect. Here, he could sense the aura of the Spirit Stream sect. Bai Xiaochun is back, he murmured. With that, he blurred into motion, flying through the air and simultaneously unleashing the Violet Chi Heavenspan incantation. As he did, violet light shone out around him, filling the area with the same color. His third eye opened on his forehead, and his view of the world suddenly became brighter and more colorful. Now that he didn't need to conceal his techniques, he performed an incantation gesture and pointed out, drawing on Violet Chi Cauldron summoning. Heaven and earth shook as he waved his sleeve, causing water vapor to roil about, which was the water swamp kingdom. He threw his head back and laughed uproariously. The feeling of not having to be worried about anything filled him with joy. The pressure and mixed emotions he had felt in the Bloodstream sect were now gone, and he began to think about everyone he knew in the Spirit Stream sect. Uncle Li, Big Fatty Zhang, Hu Xiaomei, Hu Yunfei, Shu Baosai, elder brother sect leader, Bruiser. I'm back. Spirits high, he shot through the air at top speed. Eventually he stopped to rest a bit, and pulled out the turtle walk. The mere sight of it left him sighing deeply. I didn't dare to use it in the Bloodstream sect. But now, I can finally perform fourfold spirit enhancements. Bai Xiaochun was very excited about the prospect. He had already collected plenty of material to create four-colored flame, and therefore, didn't waste any time. Without any hesitation, he took out all of his magical items and began to perform spirit enhancements. He was especially excited to enhance his signature little wooden sword. After the enhancement, it didn't look like wood anymore, but rather, gold. As for the golden crow sword, it didn't change very much, but the light that shone off of it was more dazzling than before. Before long, almost all of his magical items had been enhanced. As for the lamp that the Song clan patriarch had given him, he enhanced that too. As the silver designs glittered on its surface, he held it in his hand, and his soul trembled. The fluctuations coming off of the lamp were terrifying to the extreme. I'm so powerful I even frightened myself, he thought, eyebrows dancing up and down. After carefully putting the lamp away, he savored the experience of proceeding along back to the spirit stream sect. At one point, he suddenly recalled the little turtle, which he pulled out of his bag of holding, then shook back and forth a bit to produce the usual knocking sounds. After playing around with it for a bit, he found to his surprise that he could actually grab the tail and stretch it out. When he let go, it would snap back into place with a twang. Wow, you can do that, he said, shocked. He tried the same thing with the turtle's limbs, and even the head, and they all did the same thing. He even tried throwing it down, and found that the little turtle could actually be used like a weapon. After finding some boulders, he threw the turtle at them, and they shattered. The little turtle, however, wasn't even scratched in the process. Bai Xiaochun was starting to get the feeling that this was no simple turtle. As he made his way back to the spirit stream sect, he would often shake it, stretch it, and throw it around. A few days later, he suddenly realized that a faint aroma was emanating out from the turtle. It was hard to detect, but after inhaling it, Bai Xiaochun found that his cultivation base suddenly stirred. Then he rotated it, and large amounts of spiritual energy from the area rushed toward him, causing his spiritual seas to emanate shocking fluctuations. Whoa, he exclaimed. He tried to reproduce the effect, but failed. However, after examination, he realized that brief rotation of his cultivation base had resulted in the same progress it would normally take him a month of meditation to produce. Gasping, he looked closer at the little turtle. Don't tell me this really is the relic of eternal indestructibility, he thought, heart thumping in his chest. After thinking about all the marvelous aspects of the little turtle, he once again gently shook it back and forth in his hand. However, no matter which way he shook it, he couldn't reproduce that fragrant aroma. Not wanting to give up, he kept shaking it in his hand as he went along. Finally, 3 days later, the turtle once again emitted a fragrant aroma. Bai Xiaochun immediately sucked it in, causing his cultivation base to surge, and the surrounding energy of heaven and earth to rush toward him. He was almost like a vortex, sucking in all the local spiritual power. There were some cultivator clans in the area, and when people saw what was happening, their eyes went wide, and their hearts trembled. Elated, Bai Xiaochun threw his head back and laughed uproariously. Ha ha ha. Yet again, Bai Xiaochun's wits come out on top. This little turtle is great. I don't have to expend any effort at all, and can increase the speed of my cultivation. At that point, he decided that he would spend time every day shaking the little turtle. A few more days went by, and he finally caught sight of the spirit stream sect. The 3 mountain peaks of the south bank rose high into the air, as did the 4 mountain peaks of the north bank, and Mount Daoseed, which hung high over the Heavenspan River. Scintillating light rose up from all of the mountain peaks, as if they were building up energy. Powerful pressure and fluctuations rolled out in all directions, with the spirit stream sect being in the middle of it all. Excited, Bai Xiaochun shook the little turtle back and forth a few times. I'm finally back. I can still remember how everyone could hardly stand to part with me. Considering I've been gone so long, everyone definitely misses me. I wonder if Uncle Li has come out of secluded meditation yet. The more he thought about it, the more he was nervous for Li Qinghao. Giving the turtle a few good shakes, he picked up speed and shot toward the entrance of the sect. When he got close, 4 beams of light shot out from the sect, accompanied by a hoarse shout. Halt! Who goes there? 4 cultivators appeared, one of them in the great circle of qi condensation, and the other 3 in the 5th or 6th level. Even as the words rang out, the glow of magical techniques sprang out of their hands. However, when they caught sight of Bai Xiaochun, their eyes widened. That was especially true of the cultivator in the great circle, who immediately began to tremble. It was none other than Chen Fei. Bai Xiao, sect Uncle Bai. Thankfully, he was quick to change his wording. Without any hesitation, he clasped hands and bowed. The other 3 disciples' jaws dropped, and then they also clasped hands in greeting. It felt wonderful to finally be home. Striking the pose of someone of the senior generation, Bai Xiaochun nodded magnanimously and said, "Excellent, all of you. Remember to always work hard at cultivation." With that, he proceeded along into the sect, bringing the group with him. The Spirit Stream sect's grand spell formation didn't hinder his path at all. As soon as he entered, he saw the south bank stretched out in front of him, bustling with activity. There was Green Crest Peak, Violet Cauldron Peak, and Fragrant Cloud Peak, as well as the Servants District at the bottoms of the mountains. A few phoenixes were flying in the air, along with numerous cultivators. To Bai Xiaochun, nothing could have been more familiar. He suddenly felt the urge to make sure that everyone who missed him knew that he was back. Hovering there in midair, he threw his head back and roared, "Ladies and gentlemen of the sect, I, Bai Xiaochun, am back." His voice echoed about like thunder. Chen Fei stood off to the side, feeling bad for the South Bank. "Brothers and sisters of the Spirit Stream sect, Bai Xiaochun is back." Bai Xiaochun's voice echoed like thunder throughout the South Bank of the Spirit Stream sect, and could even be heard on the North Bank. Moments before, the sect had been buzzing with activity, filled with a din of voices. But a moment later, everything went completely quiet. Even the phoenixes flying in the air above the sect shivered and forgot to keep flying. Because Li Qinghao had gone into extended secluded meditation, Elder Zhou had taken over as the Peak Lord of Fragrant Cloud Peak. When the thunderous voice interrupted his own meditation, his eyes opened and his jaw dropped. Zhou Xinqi had been practicing cultivation on Mount Daoseed, and had just finished a session of meditation and was preparing to leave. When she heard the voice echoing back and forth like thunder, her face fell. Xu Baosai had just been preparing to go visit some friends on Green Crest Peak to flaunt some new exclusive information he'd come across, when he was suddenly interrupted by the booming voice, and his eyes went wide. Big Fatty Zhang was standing miserably in front of Xu Meixiang as she berated him. Then they heard his voice, and they both looked up. All of the cultivators and disciples on the South Bank who had been dragged into Bai Xiaochun's antics were struck mute by the words they had just heard. On Fragrant Cloud Peak, one elder had been in the middle of giving a lecture about cultivation to a group of disciples who seemed to be hanging on to his every last word. When he was interrupted by Bai Xiaochun's booming voice, his face fell. As for the disciples, they didn't seem as shocked, but were clearly moved. On Mount Daoseed, Zheng Yuandong stood there reading a jade slip, his expression grim. The news in the jade slip was anything but good, and he was just about to go to the mission's office to announce an important mission, when suddenly, a booming voice interrupted his train of thought. Immediately, he stopped in his tracks, his expression flickering. Also on Mount Daoseed were two prime elders whose faces fell. They had been among the group whose clothes were ripped to shreds by Bai Xiaochun's gravitational repulsion pearl years ago. Bai Xiaochun looked around at the South Bank, at how quiet it was, at how the birds couldn't even fly, and how even the cultivators who had been speeding through the air had suddenly stopped in place. He was visibly moved. "Does everyone still remember me? You guys definitely miss me. Without me around, your cultivation must have been very, very boring." Sighing, he looked over at Chen Fei and the other three cultivators. "Don't you agree, Chen Fei?" At first, Chen Fei wasn't sure what to say. Bracing himself, he chose to offer some praise. "Sect Uncle Bai, you have unrivaled magical powers. You're completely and utterly famous. Upon returning, your solitary shout raised the spirits of everyone inside and outside of the Spirit Stream sect." Chen Fei's three companions were shocked to hear him say such things. They had already been surprised to see the reaction caused by Bai Xiaochun's words from moments ago. But then they heard their elder brother Chen Fei, who they always took to be cold and distant, suddenly speaking in such a flattering tone. They couldn't help but gasp. These three hadn't been around in the days in which Bai Xiaochun came to be well known. They had joined the sect in the later days, and had only heard stories about the things he had done. As of this moment, they were exchanging awkward glances. Bai Xiaochun gave a long chuckle. "Ha ha ha, you're right, of course. Everyone misses me to death. Look, a single shout on my part and everyone is at a loss for words. Don't worry, everyone, I'm back, and I won't ever be leaving again." Sighing, Bai Xiaochun was just about to shout out again at the top of his lungs, when suddenly countless, heaven-shaking, earth-shattering screams rose up from the three mountain peaks of the South Bank. "The heavens don't have eyes. Bai Xiaochun is back. Damn it, didn't he go out to get experience? It's only been a few years, how come he's back so soon? Not good. The spirit-tailed chicken population is just getting back to normal. The apothecary fiend is back." As the screams echoed out, the phoenixes up in the air let out miserable shrieks and quickly flew away. The cultivators who had stopped flying gasped. Obviously, most of the cultivators who were capable of flying were in the foundation establishment stage. When they thought about the terrifying scene in the square when Bai Xiaochun ripped everyone's clothing to shreds, leaving them stark naked, their scalps went numb with fear, and they fled. As for the ordinary disciples from the three mountain peaks, when they thought of the miserable scenes from the past, their hearts were filled with grief and indignation. Zhou Xinqi gritted her teeth, her heart smoldering with hatred because of the words he had just spoken. With a cold snort, she decided to simply continue her session of secluded meditation. Xu Baosai was scowling on the verge of tears, and had lost any mood to go out. However, as soon as he thought about Bai Xiaochun's status in the sect, he flew out to go meet him. Bai Xiaochun blinked a few times in response to all the screams. Coughing dryly, he rubbed his nose, and then looked over at Chen Fei and his companions. Ha ha ha, what a passionate group, Sweat dripped down Chen Fei's forehead, but even after racking his brains, he couldn't think of what to say next. His three companions looked over at Bai Xiaochun as reverently as if he were a god. They almost couldn't believe that a single sentence from a single person could cause the entire South Bank to virtually collapse. Bai Xiaochun was starting to feel a bit awkward, and even a bit irritated. Back in the Bloodstream sect, he had been a bloodmaster, and wherever he went, people treated him with the utmost courtesy. All he had to do was speak half a word, or glare, and people would be so scared they would start shaking. Even as he grumbled inwardly about how unfair it was, a beam of light shot out from Violet Cauldron Peak, which was none other than Big Fatty Zhang, who threw his head back and let loose a long cry. Hu Xiaomei had been in secluded meditation, but now she burst with excitement as she flew out into the open. Then there was Third Fatty He and Hu Yunfei. The people who had deep connections with Bai Xiaochun felt differently than everyone else, and flew out, delighted. Zheng Yuandong cleared his throat. Refusing to make an appearance wasn't really an option. As he stood there on Mount Daoseed, looking over at Bai Xiaochun, he thought back to all the mischief he had caused in the past, and chuckled to himself. It was in that very moment that a roar of delight echoed out from the north bank. Bruiser appeared, fully 30 meters tall, like a little mountain shooting through the air. His heaven-shaking, earth-shattering cry caused all of the countless beasts on the north bank to howl at the tops of their lungs. The roaring of the beasts shocked the north bank into silence. Many disciples didn't understand what was happening and flew into the air. But then they saw Bai Xiaochun off in the distance on the south bank, and immediately, their jaws dropped. Gasps began to ring out, along with cries of shock. Bai Xiaochun, he's back. Many of the north bank disciples were screaming and backing up. Word began to spread like wildfire, sending the entire north bank into a commotion. Bai Xiaochun laughed heartily, stepping forward to meet Bruiser. Bruiser came to a stop in front of Bai Xiaochun, his eyes wide and his face a mask of joy. Without any hesitation, he shrank back down into the shape he had been when he was born. Then he latched his teeth onto Bai Xiaochun's pant legs and refused to let go, apparently worried that Bai Xiaochun might leave him again to go on adventures alone. Face beaming with joy, Bai Xiaochun reached down and scooped Bruiser up into his arms. Then he embraced Big Fatty Zhang, who seemed to be bursting with information to tell Bai Xiaochun. Before he could, Hu Xiaomei arrived, eyes fluttering as she looked at Bai Xiaochun. Big Fatty Zhang immediately stepped to the side. Bai Xiaochun laughed happily again as he looked at Hu Xiaomei. He wasn't the ignorant youth he had been in the past. After everything which had occurred in the Bloodstream sect, he had matured quite a bit. Suddenly, he was struck by impulse to lean forward and hug Hu Xiaomei. Hu Xiaomei's face turned scarlet, and she pouted playfully as she pushed him away. Before long, Hu Yunfei arrived, along with Xu Baosai. There were also many of the disciples whom Bai Xiaochun had helped in the Fallen Sword Abyss. More than 100 people clustered around him, filled with excitement. After a bit of time, they headed toward Mount Daoseed, chatting and laughing, telling Bai Xiaochun about everything that had occurred in the sect in the years he had been gone. One of the first things Bai Xiaochun asked about was Li Qinghao. Nobody was very sure about the details, but no one had heard any bad news. Bai Xiaochun felt a bit better hearing that. Many people were surprised to see such a large group emerge to receive Bai Xiaochun. That was especially true of the people who had suffered at his hands, who were completely incredulous at what they were seeing. Never could they imagine that a person like that, a person who had annoyed and frustrated so many people in the sect, would have so many friends who truly liked him. Chen Fei's three companions began to murmur among themselves. I've heard a lot of stories about Sect Uncle Bai. Just what kind of person is he anyway? For some reason, now that Sect Uncle Bai is back, the Spirit Stream sect seems different than before. Things are usually busy, and the fact that war could break out at any time is a pressure that constantly weighs down over our heads. But now, how come that pressure seems to have lifted a bit? Chen Fei didn't follow Bai Xiaochun and the others. He watched them leave, feeling a bit conflicted inside. After hearing the comments of his companions, he fell silent for a moment, then softly said, "He's Bai Xiaochun. Legacy Echelon Designate. Heaven Dao Foundation Establishment Expert. Nobody can compare to him. The light which shines from him can cast everyone else into shadow. Most people have a love-hate relationship with him, and yet, everyone believes in him. That's Bai Xiaochun. The three companions said nothing further, but their eyes seemed to flicker with understanding. As Bai Xiaochun made his way off into the distance, their expressions filled with even more reverence than before. As the entire spirit stream sect was shaken by Bai Xiaochun's return, a certain person emerged from an immortal's cave on Iris Petal Peak. It was a young woman, and as she looked over at the south bank, the wind lifted her hair, revealing fair, delicate skin. Her eyes glistened like pools of deep water, and although she wore conservative clothing, it was impossible to conceal her attractive, curvaceous figure. The alluring look in her eyes, though, made it such that any person who got close to her would feel the fires of desire rising up in their hearts. Covering a smile with her hand, she said in a melodious voice, "So, you're finally back, sweetie." On the south bank of the spirit stream sect, numerous eyes followed Bai Xiaochun as he flew like the wind toward Mount Deoseed, surrounded by more than 100 friends. Occasionally, his laughter could be heard, along with various boasting words. "Listen, guys, I really experienced some heaven-shaking, earth-shattering things in the past few years. A bunch of people fought me for a foundation establishment pill, and I almost destroyed an entire mountain. One of my flying swords cut down a whole group of foundation establishment cultivators. It was completely shocking. My scheming was godlike, and my magic unmatchable. Numerous powerful experts stood before me, trembling, their heads bowed. In fact, countless chi condensation disciples would look at me with wide eyes, their faces draining of blood as they begged for mercy." His voice echoed out in all directions, loud and proud. His friends didn't believe a word of what he was saying. They laughed and even poked fun at him because of his boasting. However, their faces were all covered with smiles, smiles of affection, wistfulness, and anticipation. To these people, Bai Xiaochun was both a fellow disciple and a friend who they would trust with their lives. He was naughty and mischievous, but in critical moments, he could reverse fate. Although he often caused trouble, when lives were on the line, they would unhesitatingly put all trust in him. He was a Heaven Dao Foundation establishment expert, the legacy echelon designate, and to them, he didn't seem wildly arrogant. Although he annoyed people in countless ways, that simply made him less lofty and distant to those close to him. In their hearts, he was always and forever their friend. That was especially true of Hu Yunfei. Such feelings of friendship were especially strong in him. He looked at Bai Xiaochun, then looked over at Hu Xiaomei, and he smiled broadly, wishing them well in his heart. Hu Xiaomei's face was bright red, and her heart was pounding. All she could think about was how Bai Xiaochun had hugged her, and as she looked over at him, her eyes glittered brightly. In fact, they glittered in much the same way Song Junwan's had. Bai Xiaochun was extremely moved to be surrounded by so many familiar faces. One by one, various memories about the spirit stream sect began to flood into his mind. He truly felt as if he had come home, and had already forgotten about the screams which he had heard moments ago. Slapping his chest proudly, he said, "You guys don't believe me? You listen to me. I, Bai Xiaochun, am totally awesome. One time, a nascent soul eccentric even praised me. And then guess what happened? He even took me as his adopted son." "Oh, we believe you," Hu Yunfei said, chuckling. Strange expressions could be seen on the faces of Big Fatty Zhang and the others, but they also looked over and assured Bai Xiaochun that they believed him. Bai Xiaochun was a bit depressed to see them chuckling in such a way. He very much wanted to tell them the truth. He had concocted medicine in the bloodstream sect. He had fought to the pinnacle inside the body of the blood ancestor. He was the illustrious and infamous blood master of Middle Peak, but he couldn't do that. It was very frustrating to not be able to bask in his own glory. "I'm telling the truth, guys. When I went out to get experience, I got a super impressive title. There was also this super beautiful vixen." Even as he spoke the words, he looked over and saw Hu Xiaomei's eyes narrow into slits. But I didn't marry her." "Which beautiful vixen was that? Please, tell me the details, big bro Xiaochun." Bai Xiaochun instantly went on guard. He was almost sure he could sense killing intent rising up in Hu Xiaomei. After all, he had become very sensitive to killing intent due to his experiences in the bloodstream sect. He was just trying to figure out how to change the topic when, all of a sudden, a huge beam of light shot up into the air from Mount Deoseed, fully 30 meters wide. Lands shook, mountains were rocked, and even the sky vibrated. The countless layers of clouds overhead began to spin into the form of a huge vortex. Rumbling sounds echoed out as something like a white sun appeared. As the sun became visible within the vortex, something else took form within it, a huge black raven. The raven's eyes were closed, and yet, it radiated an energy that could shake heaven and earth. As that energy spread out in all directions, it became a powerful pressure which weighed down on everyone present. Both the south and north banks of the spirit stream sect went completely quiet. Even Bai Xiaochun's face flickered. Apparently, he had his own ideas about what was happening, and his expression became very serious as he looked at the pillar of light. His heart began to pound as he peered at the white sun and the raven, wondering what exactly would happen. I know I have a high position in the sect, he muttered hesitantly, but there was really no need to go to such lengths to welcome me back. Xu Baosai swallowed hard, looking very nervous. Then he heard Bai Xiaochun's words, and couldn't help but quietly say, I heard the first wave was supposed to leave in a few days. From the look of things, they're leaving now. Bai Xiaochun still didn't understand what was happening, so he grabbed Xu Baosai's arm and asked, what's going on? What first wave? Where are they going? To the Luokan Mountains. Xu Baosai replied, his expression grave. Hu Yunfei's eyes began to shine brightly. After reaching Earthstring Foundation establishment, his status in the sect was different than before, and he had even become the apprentice of one of the prime elders. As such, he had access to more privileged information than before. Xiaochun, you've been gone for a while, but surely you've heard about the war between the Bloodstream sect and the Spirit Stream sect. It's on the verge of erupting at any moment. However, we can't let the war be fought within the immediate vicinity of the Spirit Stream sect. So, the sect has long since made arrangements for a huge spell formation to be erected in the Luokan Mountains, all for the purpose of fighting the Bloodstream sect. Bai Xiaochun was shaken. For some reason, he had felt as if the war were even further away than before. After all the initial preparations are complete, they'll teleport the first wave of cultivators over to the Luokan Mountains. At almost the same moment that Hu Yunfei finished speaking, a profound and archaic voice echoed out from Mount Daoseed to fill the entire Spirit Stream sect. First wave disciples, step forward immediately. Even as the voice rumbled out like thunder, Bai Xiaochun looked around and saw beams of light flying from both the south and north banks toward Mount Daoseed. Some of them were Foundation Establishment cultivators, others were in the Great Circle of Qi Condensation. Some of the disciples weren't capable of flight, and sped along on the ground. Among the beams of light, Bai Xiaochun spotted Ghost Fong and Beihan Lai. Their energy clearly surpassed that of ordinary cultivators, and they flew along like shooting stars toward Mount Daoseed. Among the more than 2,000 cultivators who made up the first wave, a few were prime elders, whose auras erupted out with particular intensity. Last was a blurry figure who emerged from the vortex up above. He materialized into a middle-aged man, whose cultivation base fluctuations vastly exceeded those of the prime elders, and caused all light to dim. Bai Xiaochun almost immediately recognized the man. He was the same patriarch who had emerged to help Bruiser, and was also the same person who received the Song Clan Patriarch. He was one of the 5 great patriarchs of the Spirit Stream sect, Li Zimo. People around Bai Xiaochun immediately began to cry out in surprise. The third-generation patriarch. It didn't take long for the cultivators of the first wave to gather behind the peak of Mount Daoseed. Li Zimo waved his right hand, and the pillar of light erupted, causing a blinding glow to spread out and cover the gathered cultivators. Next, the light flickered, and more than 2,000 cultivators vanished. Moments later, everything went back to normal. However, the pillar of light connecting Mount Daoseed to the heavens remained in place, causing faint rumbling sounds to echo out continuously. As for the other mountain peaks, although no light shot up from them, Bai Xiaochun got the sense that they were pulsing with intense energy that could spill out in the form of light at any moment. Everyone else in the Spirit Stream sect was shaken. It was at that point that Bai Xiaochun heard Hu Yunfei's voice again. That's the first wave. It will only be a few days now until the second wave is teleported out. There are a lot more people assigned to the second wave. I'm among them, actually. Bai Xiaochun's heart was already pounding. Looking over at Hu Yunfei, he saw him smiling warmly. At the same time, many of Bai Xiaochun's other surrounding friends began to chime in to explain which wave they had been assigned to. Bai Xiaochun quickly realized that every single person present, even the Qi Condensation cultivators, and even Hu Xiaomei, were all going to be fighting in the war. It was obvious that this war was going to be the last stand for the Spirit Stream sect. Big Fatty Zhang could sense the atmosphere turning serious, and quickly said, I heard my master say that the Spirit Stream sect has been building a spell formation in the Luokan Mountains for years now, all for the purpose of defending against a Bloodstream sect invasion. The power of that spell formation has been built up over generations, and is beyond extraordinary. The Bloodstream sect might be strong, but it's impossible to say how the fighting will turn out. Others began to chime in. That's right, the Bloodstream sect has pushed things too far. If we had agreed to their demands, we would have been forced to live a life of servitude, just waiting around for them to come back and kill us later. The Spirit Stream sect has been my home from the moment I joined it. Live for the Spirit Stream sect, die for the Spirit Stream sect. We can't avoid this war. Whether or not we win, we'll fight to the bitter end. Soon, everyone's eyes began to shine with flickers of killing intent. They weren't the only ones to be having such a reaction. Throughout the Spirit Stream sect, virtually all hearts were pulsing with killing intent. Some chose to hold it in, some gave voice to it. Either way, a spirit rose up that could shake heaven and earth, filling all of the mountain peaks that made up the sect. Bai Xiaochun had just returned, and hadn't been present for all of the Spirit Stream sect's war preparations. However, he could well imagine what had gone on. As of this moment, everyone in the sect was completely united in their desire to fight. Hu Yunfei turned to Bai Xiaochun and said, "Xiaochun, considering you've been gone for a while, you might not have heard the news from the Bloodstream sect. A terrifying chosen rose up there, someone named Nightcrypt. He was even promoted to be the Blood Master of their middle peak." What? Bai Xiaochun had been in the middle of worrying about the war between the two sects when Hu Yunfei's words struck his ears, causing him to narrow his eyes. That's right. Beihan Lai, Ghost Fang, Shangguan Tianyu, and I all made an agreement. If we catch sight of this Nightcrypt, we'll all join forces to kill him immediately. Xiaochun, when the time comes, you have to help too, alright? Hu Yunfei's eyes flickered with the desire to kill. After reaching Earthstring Foundation establishment, he had changed in fundamental ways. He was now his own man. However, in the end, he continued to value his friendships more than anything else. Bai Xiaochun's heart was pounding. Licking his lips, he was just about to reply, when the killing intent around him erupted at the mention of Nightcrypt's name. Even Xu Baosai was gritting his teeth in anger. Big Fatty Zhang's eyes burned as if with fire, and of the group, only Hu Xiaomei seemed to look a little frightened. That Nightcrypt is completely vicious, someone said, snorting coldly, and has killed too many people to count. Based on the news I heard, he loves to drink human blood. In fact, if he doesn't drink blood on a daily basis, he goes on a rampage. I heard it has something to do with the techniques he cultivates. He drinks human blood? Bai Xiaochun said, eyes going wide. It seemed completely incredulous. As far as he could remember, he had never done anything even similar to that. I heard that Nightcrypt has a completely twisted personality, someone else said. He's a total pervert. He even has a bad reputation in the Bloodstream sect. However, he's so ferocious that nobody there even dares to stand up to him. He's a pervert? He has a twisted personality. Bai Xiaochun took a deep breath. For some reason, these descriptions didn't seem like him at all. That's nothing, Xu Baosai said with a growl of hatred. I heard that he's addicted to refining corpses. How terrifying. Bai Xiaochun's eyes went even wider. Everyone seemed to want to top the others in terms of what they knew about Nightcrypt. In the end, though, he's truly a chosen. At first nobody knew who he was, and he was only in Mortal Dao Foundation establishment. Despite that, he actually defeated Shui Mei and the Middle Peak Grand Elder. He even crushed Song Ke. That's how he became the Bloodmaster. I even heard that one of the Bloodstream sect's patriarchs took him as an adopted son. Nightcrypt's Tao of Medicine is completely devilish. That's why they call him Plague Devil. As soon as people brought up the Tao of Medicine and the Plague Devil moniker, people began to look over at Bai Xiaochun. His heart was now racing. Is this Nightcrypt really so bad? Bai Xiaochun blurted subconsciously. Those are all probably just rumors. However, as soon as he finished speaking, Big Fatty Zhang clenched his hands into fists. Worried that Bai Xiaochun might not take the matter seriously, he said, Xiaochun, you have no way of knowing this, but Nightcrypt's most terrifying aspect isn't his brutality, but his augury magic. There's nothing he can't figure out. With the snap of his fingers, he can come to know anything in the heavens or on earth. In fact, he divined everything there was to know about you. We absolutely have to wipe this guy out of existence. Everyone around him nodded gravely. Bai Xiaochun looked at Big Fatty Zhang with wide eyes, thinking back to everything that had occurred when he came back as Nightcrypt. Xu Baosai gritted his teeth and said, that's right. We can't let that bastard live. Damn it, if I could have divine abilities like his, I could die without regret. Based on what I've heard, there are already about 10 different cliques in the sect which have formed, all devoted solely to killing Nightcrypt. The Legacy Echelon cultivators released a statement that they vowed to kill him, and even the Prime Elders have plans in place. I also heard that the sect leader offered a big reward for his head. Once the fighting starts, Nightcrypt is going to be killed beyond the shadow of a doubt. The closer Bai Xiaochun and his friends got to Mount Daoseed, the more beads of sweat could be seen on his forehead. He felt wronged, of course. During his time as Nightcrypt, he hadn't done anything to offend so many people to the point where they should want to kill him. That was especially true when he heard that the Legacy Echelon and the Prime Elders were planning to kill him, and that his own elder brother sect leader was offering a reward for him. Bai Xiaochun's heart was pounding, and even as he prepared to say something, a voice suddenly echoed out from Mount Daoseed. It was none other than sect leader Zheng Yuandong. Bai Xiaochun, come see me immediately. What? Bai Xiaochun immediately got nervous and jumpy, and even reached up to rub his own face and make sure he wasn't wearing the Nightcrypt mask. To the surprise of all his friends, he nervously bid them farewell and then flew toward the hall where Zheng Yuandong awaited him. After arriving, he hesitated outside for a moment before taking a deep breath and then entering the hall. After looking around, he saw Zheng Yuandong standing with his back to him, hands clasped at his waist. Flickering lamplight lit the hall, which also seemed to be filled with a pulsating pressure. Bai Xiaochun had been a bit guilty before, but now started to get more nervous. Sect leader, elder brother, Bai Xiaochun, what gall you have? Zheng Yuandong said, spinning in place, his eyes flashing like lightning. His voice boomed like thunder, and his cultivation base flared, emitting the pressure of the great circle of foundation establishment. He was only a hair away from the core formation stage. If it had been a mere matter of cultivation base pressure, Bai Xiaochun wouldn't have been worried at all. But he already feared both Zheng Yuandong and Li Qinghao, and to hear his elder brother berating him angrily caused Bai Xiaochun to immediately leap to the conclusion that he knew about the Nightcrypt situation. Elder brother sect leader, I know I made a mistake, he said, looking like he was on the verge of tears. In his mind, if the sect leader knew that he was Nightcrypt, then the best thing to do was admit fault. You're quite the daredevil, aren't you? Zheng Yuandong said furiously. Do you even think before causing so much trouble? You asked to go out and gain experience, and that was fine, but then you went so far as to hide your aura? Do you know how many villains are out there looking for you? Did you know that the 4 Bloodmasters of the Bloodstream sect swore an oath to kill you? If they found you, you would never have been able to escape. The only thing the sect could do was spread word that you were in secluded meditation, and secretly search for you. We turned the whole Eastwood continent upside down trying to find you. Bai Xiaochun blinked a few times, then breathed a sigh of relief. Moved, he bowed his head meekly and admitted the error of his ways. Zheng Yuandong scolded him a bit more, and when he was satisfied with Bai Xiaochun's expression, he snorted coldly. By this point, he could see that Bai Xiaochun's cultivation base was already in the mid-foundation establishment stage, and his eyes softened a bit. However, he still seemed angry. Fine, I'm not going to ask about why you concealed your aura, or where you went. You're not a kid anymore, and you know how to behave yourself. The real reason I called you here was to assign you a mission. Bai Xiaochun could tell from the sect leader's body language that he'd gone a bit too far by leaving and concealing his aura. Trying to look stalwart, he slapped his chest and growled, Elder brother, just say the word. Even if it involves climbing mountains of blades and swimming through seas of burning oil, I won't even frown, no matter what you say. Bai Xiaochun wanted to put on an impressive show, but he also didn't want to commit to anything specific. Although his words were impressive sounding, he hadn't actually said that he would accept the mission. Zheng Yuandong swished his sleeve dramatically and said, the Spirit Stream sect is about to go to war with the Bloodstream sect. Your mission is, should you encounter the chance on the battlefield, you are to cut down the weakest of the Bloodstream sect's 4 Bloodmasters, Nightcrypt. Huh? Bai Xiaochun thought. He felt like he was about to go crazy. The Bloodstream sect wanted him to kill Bai Xiaochun, and the Spirit Stream sect wanted him to kill Nightcrypt. The idea of trying to figure out a way to kill himself was so puzzling that Bai Xiaochun couldn't help but frown. Zheng Yuandong could see the odd expression on his face, and looked at him suspiciously. What's wrong? All of the Bloodstream sect Bloodmasters deserve to die. More nervous than ever, Bai Xiaochun thumped himself on the again and said, Elder brother sect leader, don't worry. This Nightcrypt has a twisted personality, and loves to drink human blood. He is vile beyond description. Completely deranged, and deserving of punishment by all living beings. I heard that he seduced the Grand Elder of Middle Peak, and somehow won the favor of most of the patriarchs of the Bloodstream sect. A person like that is someone I definitely must exterminate. Although he looked like the picture of righteous fury, inside, he was more anxious than ever. So, it turns out you know quite a bit about this Nightcrypt. Zheng Yuandong looked a bit surprised. Bai Xiaochun howled inwardly. It seemed that nothing he said today was coming out right. More nervous than ever, he continued, I, Bai Xiaochun, am devoted to righteousness. During my wanderings outside the sect, I heard of this maniac Nightcrypt. Elder brother sect leader, don't worry. I, Bai Xiaochun, guarantee that I will accomplish the mission. Zheng Yuandong's gaze slowly softened. With your Heaven Dao Foundation Establishment cultivation base, and the fact that you're already in mid-foundation establishment, you shouldn't have any trouble cutting down Nightcrypt on the battlefield. I'll assign some people to work with you, some of the Prime Elders and Legacy Echelon cultivators. They'll make sure you get your chance. Remember, you must accomplish this mission and kill Bloodmaster Nightcrypt. If you do, then you'll be able to join the Legacy Echelon even without reaching core formation. The Legacy Echelon is the true foundation of the Spirit Stream sect. No matter how bad things get, all of the sect's resources will be focused on preserving the Echelon. The implication behind those words spoken caused Bai Xiaochun to feel shaken, and yet, also caused warmth to rise up in his heart. The way he heard it, his elder brother sect leader was saying that even if the Spirit Stream sect lost the war, there was still a way for him to keep on living. Perhaps because of his Heaven Dao Foundation Establishment cultivation base, he was already part of a select group of people who would remain safe. However, if he managed to cut down Bloodmasters in battle, then it would ensure that his rank in the sect rose even higher. You just got back, Zheng Yuandong said slowly, so go pay your respects to our master. Then rest a bit. As for the arrangements for the battlefield, you've been placed into the fourth wave. Bai Xiaochun took a deep breath. Clasping hands formally to Zheng Yuandong, he didn't immediately leave, but instead asked about Li Qinghao. Li Qinghao hadn't offered him much of an explanation before going into seclusion, and back then, Bai Xiaochun had assumed it was nothing more than an ordinary session of meditation. Never could he have imagined that he was actually trying to break through to core formation. That was no simple task. Your uncle Li has already reached core formation, Zheng Yuandong said with a smile. He's now in the Legacy Echelon. He's currently in recovery, and should come out any day now. Eyes flashing with excitement, Bai Xiaochun clasped hands and then rushed away. After leaving the hall, Bai Xiaochun went to pay his respects to the portrait of his master. Then he returned to his own Immortals cave on Mount Daoseed. Bruiser was waiting there for him, and immediately ran up and started tumbling around at his feet. Did you recognize me last time I was here? Bai Xiaochun asked, petting Bruiser a few times. Bruiser nodded and then let out a few yips. So, what did you think? Is your dad awesome or what? I went completely wild in the Bloodstream sect. Nobody there ever dared to provoke me. Bai Xiaochun was feeling very pleased with himself as he bragged about his accomplishments. However, it was then that he realized that Bruiser had matured even more. Shockingly, his cultivation base was on the verge of reaching late foundation establishment. Bai Xiaochun immediately felt sour inside. Your cultivation is going a bit too quickly, isn't it? He said. It didn't seem fair. He had worked long and hard to reach mid-foundation establishment, and had even risked his own life. All Bruiser had to do was fool around all day, and he got the same result. Bruiser appeared to be very proud of himself. Looking at Bai Xiaochun, he made some barking sounds that no one else would be able to comprehend, but Bai Xiaochun, having raised him, could understand. Bai Xiaochun's eyes went wide, and he gasped. The Peak Lord of Iris Petal Peak fed you medicinal pills every day. The founding patriarch frequently came to adjust your chi passageways? The old dragon came and let you drink his lifeblood? What? You went to the arcane pocket realm? Why you? Bai Xiaochun's eyes went wide as he glared jealously at Bruiser. Okay, tell me the truth. Did you go steal any bras while I was gone? Bruiser howled softly in response. The two of them chatted back and forth until evening fell. However, worried that Bruiser's cultivation base might eventually exceed his own, Bai Xiaochun finally called an end to the chatting and sat down to meditate and work on his Violet Chi Heavenspan incantation. Over the course of the following days, quite a few people came to visit, but after that, things quieted down. After spending time reminiscing with so many acquaintances, Bai Xiaochun came to realize that the Spirit Stream sect had changed while he'd been gone. Back before he'd left, everyone was focused primarily on their cultivation. Although there were some conflicts and rivalries, it was always possible to hear people chatting happily. Everyone had always seemed relaxed. But now, silence seemed to prevail, and pressure seemed to constantly weigh down on the sect. A storm was coming, the war, and all of the disciples were wrapped up in preparing for it. Thankfully, because of that pressure and seriousness, the killing intent of the cultivators grew more intense. The survival of their sect was on the line, and however deep the cultivators sank into the pressure, that was how explosive their performance would be on the battlefield. The Spirit Stream sect was stronger now than it had ever been. Virtually all of the items in the market outside the sect had been purchased. Furthermore, because so many disciples were buying things, prices had climbed. That was especially true of spirit medicine, paper talismans, and other items designed for warfare. As far as magical items went, they eventually sold out completely. And when it came to the disciples from Violet Cauldron Peak who could perform spirit enhancements, they were constantly busy, and the lines only continued to grow longer. Quite a few people started coming to Bai Xiaochun to ask for medicine concocting services. Even though they knew that terrifying things could result, they still wanted his help. The more Bai Xiaochun came to understand the situation in the spirit stream sect, the more his mood sank, and the more often he frowned. Currently, he was sitting on a boulder near his immortals cave, a vantage point that allowed him to see the entire sect. He could see all of the familiar mountains, the rushing Heavenspan River, and couldn't stop wondering what the result of all the fighting would be. The Middle Reaches, and the Sky River Court, he murmured. The chance to take over the position occupied by the Sky River Court was something that could arouse an indescribable thirst among sects of the lower reaches. Is it really worth it? He said, sighing. From the bottom of his heart, he truly hoped that the two sects wouldn't actually go to war. Perhaps other people thought of the Bloodstream sect as a vicious, brutal, and devilish sect. But as far as Bai Xiaochun was concerned, they had treated him well. Even as Bai Xiaochun sighed, a soft voice spoke out behind him. Maybe the Sky River Court isn't worth it in and of itself. But the Patriarch's hope of breaking through to the next level is involved. Plus, the sect itself would then have a chance to grow even stronger. Once all of the other current disciples have access to the spiritual energy of the Middle Reaches, it would only take a few dozen years or so for them to rapidly increase their cultivation bases. When you consider all that, it changes the story, doesn't it? Taken by surprise, Bai Xiaochun turned to look over his shoulder, and saw someone standing there in a long green robe, pulsing with powerful energy, and smiling. It was Li Qinghao. Li Qinghao looked very different from how Bai Xiaochun remembered him. He seemed more reserved and more dignified, and as Bai Xiaochun looked at him, he got the sense that there was an enormous vortex inside of him, something that, if it were unleashed, could shake heaven and earth in enigmatic ways. Bai Xiaochun had never even sensed such fluctuations from the Prime Elders. Eyes widening, he shouted, "Uncle Li." With that, he leapt to his feet and rushed over to hug Li Qinghao. Li Qinghao laughed and tousled his hair. "Yeah, you've grown up quite a bit, haven't you?" In Li Qinghao's eyes, Bai Xiaochun would always be that young boy who had lit an incense stick 13 times on top of a mountain. Li Qinghao's words almost caused tears to well up in Bai Xiaochun's eyes. Back in the Bloodstream sect, he had been forced to hide his identity, but had never forgotten about Li Qinghao and his kindness. After returning to the Spirit Stream sect, he had been worried that something went wrong in Li Qinghao's secluded meditation. However, now that he could see that he truly had reached core formation, it filled him with incredible excitement, even more excitement than if he had just concocted a high-level medicinal pill. Xiaochun, the war is not as simple as you might imagine. Li Qinghao sat down, and Bai Xiaochun sat down next to him. In addition to everything I just mentioned, don't forget about the reserve powers at the sect's command. When it comes to having control over the lower reaches, and the glory that would come with it, there are many factors involved. The war between the Profound Stream sect and the Pill Stream sect is reaching a conclusion. The Pill Stream sect has suffered major losses, and more than half of their disciples have already defected to the Profound Stream sect. Although the Profound Stream sect has also suffered significant losses, they're already in the process of recovering. The Pill Stream sect has retreated to their sect headquarters, and it won't be long now before the two sects become one, and they'll be even more powerful than before. At this point, the Profound Stream sect has two problems. 1. They have to completely defeat the Pill Stream sect. 2. They have to reorganize their sect and smooth out any internal conflicts. At the moment, the Profound Stream sect is at its weakest, and has no choice but to press the Pill Stream sect hard to defeat it. As for the Bloodstream sect, they have been delaying in the hopes that the Spirit Stream sect will meet their demands and allow the sect to be sealed. Bai Xiaochun hesitated for a moment, trying to decide if he should bring up a certain topic. Do we really have to fight? Isn't there some other way? Don't think too deeply into things, Li Qinghao replied softly. This war is really unavoidable. Any sect that aspires to get to the Middle Reaches will have to go to war eventually. If we don't fight now, if we compromise, we will be bringing certain disaster down on ourselves in the future. We will wheeze and gasp our way to death over 1,000 years. Does that really compare to going out in a blaze of glory in battle? We can't prevent the war from happening, and neither can the Bloodstream sect. There is no other option. If we claim to have given up on the opportunity to better our own sect, people won't believe us. Even oaths sworn between the sects will be worth little. The only way to end things without war would be for both sects to somehow come to trust each other in this moment of deadly crisis. However, it doesn't seem likely that such a thing could occur. Li Qinghao shook his head and looked over at Bai Xiaochun. Don't think too much into it. Remember, you stay behind me when the time comes to fight. I fear that many people are going to die. Li Qinghao sighed softly, then rose to his feet. Seeing that Bai Xiaochun seemed to be lost in thought, he reached down and clasped his shoulder. Come on, let's go. I want to take you to see someone from the senior generation. My own master. Bai Xiaochun looked up in surprise. This was his first time hearing anything about Li Qinghao having a master. From what he knew, the only person who could be a master to Li Qinghao would have to at least be a prime elder, or perhaps even one of the 5 patriarchs. After taking a moment to compose himself, he followed Li Qinghao off of Mount Daoseed. As they rose higher, Bai Xiaochun was surprised to find that Li Qinghao was actually flying up into the air behind Mount Daoseed. There didn't seem to be anything behind Mount Daoseed except the flowing waters of the Heavenspan River. Thus, this episode comes to an end. Remember to like and comment so we can discuss the story together. Until we meet again in the next chapters.